had an affair with my husband's childhood best friend and karma got me back. Hi, Redditors. I'm new on this app, but I never expected my first Reddit experience to be me sharing a story that has damaged my life in so many ways. I had an affair with my husband's childhood friend, and now I'm facing the consequences of my actions. I got my karma, and it slaps harder than anything I can describe. I've always heard that karma is a bitch. Well, now I'm beginning to understand what that saying really meant. I decided to sow more than I could reap, and now I'm reaping a whole lot of miserable deeds. Cheating is one thing, but cheating with someone's close friend is another level of wrong. And here I am, in this position, with this disgusting shame I have brought upon myself. Temptation is something that not even the strongest of hearts can resist. It takes a lot of self-discipline to not give in to something that's literally right in front of you. I couldn't resist the temptation that was right in front of me, and that led me to committing a taboo that I regret with all my heart. My story is just not any normal story. It did not just happen overnight. I didn't just cheat overnight. It's something that was months or even years in the making. Before I go on, let me tell you all a little background story about me and my husband. My name is Christina, and I'm a 29-year-old makeup artist. I've been married to my husband, Andrew, a 31-year-old accountant, for over 3 years now. I met Andrew when his sister booked me for a makeup session. She came to New York to visit Andrew for some time before going on. Her birthday was in the same week, so she decided to book a makeup artist for her birthday shoot. I was recommended to her, and that's how I got the gig. Andrew was not in the house all day, but only got back when I was already done with the makeup. He greeted me casually before going upstairs. I was really shy when I saw him because Andrew is very attractive. Before I continue the story, let it be known that I also met Andrew's childhood friend when I came to do his sister's makeup. But that story is coming up ahead. I'm the type of woman that likes men who do not flaunt their interest for me openly. I like men that act like they are uninterested. Yes, Redditors, I know that sounds extremely weird, but it's true. That's the kind of person I am. That day, when I noticed how casual Andrew was when he greeted me, I took a liking to him. He looked extremely tired and went into his room immediately. His sister is quite a jovial person, and she was the one who told me how hard her brother works. She told me he gets back from work late sometimes and ends up tired. But on that particular day, Andrew got back home at 5 p.m., and that's when I was able to see him. I was already done with the makeup, and the photographer was already at the house so he could take the pictures. I did not have any business there again and was about to leave, but when I saw Andrew, I knew I was done for. Yes, I liked him the very first moment I saw him. I don't mean love at first sight, lol. It was more like a silly attraction that came at the spur of the moment. Even now that I think about it, I can't deny the fact that my husband is really attractive. I'm not surprised that I got attracted to him on the very first day I saw him. So, my fellow Redditors, that attraction led me into making a very stupid decision. I asked his sister if I could stay behind just to see how the pictures came out and to help her retouch the makeup when necessary. Yes, I was that desperate to get Andrew's attention. The surprising thing is that Andrew literally took forever to come out that day. The photographer was almost done with the pictures before I spotted Andrew coming out of the house. Imagine waiting hours just to see someone, and when they're finally there, standing right before you, your sense of reasoning disappears. I could not even walk towards him and start a conversation. It was his sister who took it upon herself to ask me if I fancied her brother. I tried to talk my way out of it, but eventually, I gave in and decided to tell her the truth. She was excited at the prospect of me liking him, but she was also a little bit sorry for me. When I asked her why she was sorry, she told me that Andrew already had a girlfriend and they were pretty serious. My fellow Redditors, I felt really heartbroken when she told me that. I know it sounds weird to be heartbroken when you have not even dated this person, but it wasn't easy. Have you ever had a crush who was dating someone else? It's a very horrible feeling. My main reason for feeling bad was that I'd wasted hours of work waiting for him so I could start a conversation, only to be told that he had a serious girlfriend. The makeup artist in me already calculated how much money I could have made during the time I spent daydreaming about someone I met barely hours before that time. Since I no longer had a reason to stay, I grabbed my makeup items and proceeded to leave the house. Andrew's sister did something that literally shook me in many ways. She called her brother at the lady minute and asked him to come see me off. Yes, she did that. I was so embarrassed that I tried to give her a hint that I was not interested in doing that. She did not listen to me at all. Andrew looked tired, but he still walked towards us with a smile on his face. He commented on my makeup skills and bid me farewell. Before he went back to the house, his sister made a comment about me having a crush on him. I swear, Redditors, I felt like letting the ground swallow me. At first, Andrew thought his sister was just being playful, but when he noticed my expressions, he realized she was telling the truth. Everything felt too awkward, and I did not want to be in that situation. I quickly left and made my way back home. 3 months later, I got a text from Andrew's sister. Apparently, she was back in New York and needed another makeup tutorial. That's how I ended up meeting Andrew's childhood friend, Collins. When I was busy with Andrew's sister's makeup, Collins randomly came to the house. He was friends with Andrew's sister. Well, I'll call her by her name from now on. Her name is Linda. So Collins came over while I was busy with Linda's makeup. He was friendly and even offered to assist me with the brushes and makeup items I needed while I was doing the makeup. The three of us managed to chat during the course of the makeup, and I was glad that the work environment was conducive and fun. At some point during the makeup, Collins asked for my phone number. He insisted that he just wanted to find more clients for me. I didn't mind and gave my phone number to him. I already forgot about the crush I had on Andrew because I honestly did not feel like he was someone I was ever going to see again. It was only a coincidence that his sister randomly asked me to be her makeup artist again. Well, I was very wrong because I saw Andrew again. He came back from work to get something before going back. My fellow Redditors, I really felt like the universe wanted us to meet again. But unfortunately for me, Andrew was in a rush. He went back to work immediately. Linda asked me if I still had feelings for him, and I brushed it off. I was not ready to go to that party. To be honest, I felt like a high school girl who was having a fling with someone that didn't even know her. The fact that he had a girlfriend was a huge turnoff because I was not ready to be that girl that tried to steal someone else's boyfriend. Well, my fellow Redditors, I did end up being that girl at the end of the day. 2 days after doing Linda's makeup, I got a call from Collins. He asked us to meet up for coffee, and I agreed. Collins was a nice guy, but he was not the man whose attention I wanted to get. But I didn't mind having a harmless coffee with him. After 3 weeks of randomly meeting up for coffee, Collins told me he had feelings for me. Okay, for someone who wanted to get the attention of his childhood best friend, I was not really excited. Andrea was the one I liked. But unfortunately, he was in a relationship. Collins seemed nice and all, but I found it weird to date the best friend of a guy I had feelings for. It was never going to end well, so I lied to Collins and told him I was not ready to be in a serious relationship. Prior to my conversation with Collins, Linda already told me Collins was a flirt, and I shouldn't take him seriously. I did not believe her until Collins told me we could just hook up and have a fling. I was not up for it, so I told him so. I don't want this to get too long, so I'll try to just point out the main details. Linda found a job in New York and started living with Andrew temporarily till she was able to get her own place. Linda and I became friends, so she invited me to Collins' house often. Sometimes I'd practice new makeup trends on her face and we'd experiment it together. Linda and I became quite close, and it was a friendship I didn't see coming. I know you all are where Collins was during all this time. Collins was still in a relationship, and his girlfriend, Sandra, even came to the house many times. Yes, I know what you all are thinking. It did hurt me to see the guy I liked with his girlfriend, but there was nothing I could do. Months flew by, and Kinda told me Collins and Sandra took a break in their relationship. I don't really know the details of what happened, but I heard that Sandra had been transferred to work in another state. Collins was not ready for a long-distance relationship, so they decided to take a break and see how things went. Long story short, I decided to use that opportunity to get Andrew's attention. I know that sounds desperate and awkward, but I liked him a lot and wanted to date him. We started chatting once in a while anytime I visited Linda, and that's how our friendship started. But it was just a friendship. There was nothing more to it. But one day, Linda invited me to the house to help her pack because she already found an apartment to move into. I knew that would be my last excuse to see Andrew, so I decided to speak to him. I stayed overnight in their house because we packed till it was very late. Linda asked me to stay over so I could follow her to her new apartment. That night, I met Andrew in the living room and we started chatting randomly. He was quite sad that his sister was going to move out since he's gotten used to being around. The three of us drank a lot that night and watched movies. Linda decided to go to sleep early since she still had to move out. My fellow Redditors, that's how I was left in the living room with Andrew. I don't know if it was the alcohol we took or the romantic movies we watched, but we ended up sleeping together that night. When I woke up the next morning, I was afraid he'd regret everything and possibly tell me it was a mistake, but that wasn't the case. Oh my God, this got longer than I expected, Redditors. The main story is not even here yet. I just wanted you all to understand the dynamic that started between Collins, Andre, and I. Talking about Collins, if you're wondering where he was during all these, I'll tell you. A few months before Linda moved out, Collins lost his father and went back to his hometown. He told us it was really tough on his family since his mother was also dead. He had 4 siblings to take care of, so he decided to stay in his hometown for a while to monitor them and be the father figure. Andrew and I started dating weeks after our intimate moment in his house. A part of me was really scared he'd get back with his girlfriend, but I decided to finally ask him if they were ever going to get back together. He told me he was not getting back with Sandra because he was not ready for a long-distance relationship. Linda was really happy I was dating Andrew because she believed I genuinely liked him a lot. The relationship between Andrew and Collins was still quite strong despite the distance. Andrew and Collins called each other almost every week, and Collins even tried his best to send Andrew money to support him sometimes. Collins and I lost contact during that period, and it was mostly my fault. I blocked him even before he went to his father's burial because I did not want to complicate things. He'd approached me many times and I always said no. I did not want to keep hurting him, so I decided to cut all communication with him. Collins was not aware that Andrew and I were in a relationship at all. Maybe Andrew did not feel the need to tell him since he was not aware of Collins' feelings for me. Andrea was never really home when Collins used to flirt with me, so he was oblivious to our dynamic. I also took Linda's words seriously and did not take Collins seriously because I believed he was just a flirt. Andrew and I dated for 2 more years before he proposed to me. I said yes instantly, and that's how we got married. I'm going to say this with all my heart. I love my husband very much. My fellow Redditors, I love Andrew with all my heart. Even from the first day I saw him, I knew that I had strong feelings for that man. Getting married to him was the happiest moment of my whole life. Even my family believed that there was no better match for me. His family was very welcoming and they made me feel at home. A few weeks before the wedding, Andrew told Collins he was getting married to the girl he's been dating for over 3 years. Collins knew Andrew was in a relationship, but he did not know it was me. Maybe Andrew did not mention my name, or maybe Collins just decided not to think about it. I don't know which one it is, because when Collins came back to New York for the wedding 2 weeks early, he was shocked to see that I was the one getting married to Andrew. Collins pulled me to the side and poured out his heart. He accused me of trying to use his childhood best friend to make him jealous. Yes, he said that. I had to make it clear to Collins that I'd always liked Andrew from the very first day I saw him. I had to make him understand that even if Andrew was not his best friend, I'd still have dated him. Collins did not seem to get my explanation at all. He looked like he could snap my neck in half. My fellow Redditors, that really made me scared. I did not want Collins to end up ruining my relationship with Andrew, so I decided to go tell Linda what had transpired. She called Collins and explained everything to him. She even explained how I'd told her I had a crush on Andrew since the very first day I saw him. Collins finally decided to let it go and told us he was just overacting. I didn't want to count in his words, so I told Andrew everything. Andrew seemed upset at first because of Collins' behavior, but they had a bro talk about it and everything was cleared. Collins assured Andrew that he was just joking and wanted to make me sweat just for fun. We laughed it off and moved on. We had a stress-free marriage 2 weeks later. When I moved into Andrew's house after the wedding, our life as a married couple began. It was really a nice experience, and it felt good to call someone your husband confidently. It felt good to own the right to somebody as much as they owned rights to you. I fell in love with the way he treated me and the way our marriage had mutual respect for each other. I continued my job as a makeup artist, and I was really busy. Andrew was also busy with work, but we'd find time once in a while to go on dates and go on trips. Everything was literally perfect, and I did not think that there'd ever be a reason for me to come to Reddit and write about how my marriage has taken a drastic turn because of me. Yes, me. There's no one more responsible than me. Sure, other people played a part in it, but the ball was always in my court. I'm the one who really had the final say to decide if I wanted to fall for the temptation that brought itself. I got carried away, and now I've broken everything Andrew and I worked hard to build. I cheated. I cheated on my husband. I never thought I'd ever cheat on him. I never thought things would get to this point, and now I regret everything that get in the way of me and my husband. If you're guessing that Collins had a hand in it, you're right. I bet you never guessed that Sandra, his ex-girlfriend, would have a hand in it too, right? Well, Sandra is also very much involved in this whole fiasco. As much as everyone has a hand in it, I'm the one to blame. Does Andrew have a hand in it? I don't really know. But he's not entirely innocent. One day I got the shock of my life when Linda invited me to her apartment urgently. Many times before then, Linda had always invited me to come to her apartment for one or two things. Our friendship was still the same, and we never let anything water it down. So, on this fateful day, Linda said I had to come urgently. Andrew was at work, so I dressed up and went to her place. Linda was practically pacing around the room when I came. I was really surprised to see her acting that way, so I asked her what the problem was. My fellow Redditors Linda told me that an unexpected guest was back in New York. That unexpected guest is Sandra. In any normal relationship, your husband's ex-girlfriend shouldn't bother you that much. But in my case, it bothered me a lot. The fact that Sandra and Andrew were in a very serious relationship and only broke up because of work was enough reason to make me worried. They didn't break up because they fell out of love or anything like that. They broke up because they couldn't manage to have a long-distance relationship. I was very scared. I was terrified of the prospect of Sandra trying to get back together with him. There was every possibility that she would try to make things work, and I knew it. I knew that if she wanted him, the fact that he was married was not going to stop her. Linda tried to calm me down, but I was too far gone in my head to think straight. I honestly thought that my marriage was over, but Linda made me understand that I was overacting. She told me not to think too much about it, and that the only reason she felt like letting me know was so I would not overreact when I found out later. We all know some things are easier said than done, and in my situation, it was the same thing. I had a lot that was at stake, so I decided to go back and get myself together. That day, I really found it hard to sleep. I really wanted to know if Andrew was aware that Sandra was back in New York. My fellow Redditors, you had to see how uneasy I was that night. It was so bad that even Andrew noticed that I was not my usual self. He asked me if everything was fine, and I told him I just had something on my mind, and it was not a big deal. Andrew did not buy my excuse. He was so tired from a hectic workday, but he insisted I told him what was bothering me before I went to bed. When I finally told him Sandra was back in New York, he was not surprised. Yes, Redditors, Andrew seemed to have been aware of Sandra's arrival. If I was worried before, the knowledge of that just made me more worried. I asked him how he knew, and he told me she reached out to him recently and asked them to meet for coffee. Listen to me, guys. I don't know if I might come across as paranoid or a drama queen, but I did not like what he said at all. Any woman would be angry if she found out her husband's ex-girlfriend asked him to meet her for coffee. But in my situation, I was paranoid. I knew their history, and I was aware of the fact that they never really had real relationship problems. I'm not one to bottle things in, so I told my husband right there, and then that I didn't want him to go meet Sandra. He asked why, and I told him everything I had in my mind. We never really kept secrets from each other before, so I felt comfortable telling him I was not happy about Sandra's arrival. Like all men in that situation act, he sweet-talked me into believing that there was nothing going on between him and Sandra. He told me she was still his friend, and all he wanted to do was marry her and catch up. There was nothing I could say again because I didn't want to come across as the overprotective wife. He had a point. He knew her even before he met me, and they were still friends. I made him promise me that he'd be back in less than an hour, and he did. I'll be lying if I said I was not still worried. Well, they had coffee 1 week later, and we moved on with our lives. But I still had a feeling that Sandra was trying to reach out to Andrew. I knew this because of the sudden calls Andrew was getting frequently. He'd silence his phone or cut the call, but I knew there had to be something fishy going on. I managed to lie with that suspicious feeling for 3 more months before something unexpected happened. Collins came back to New York with his siblings. He'd earned enough money in his hometown for all those years, so he decided to come back to New York with 2 of his siblings. The rest were either in college or working. I did not expect Collins to return at all. It honestly came as a shock to me. At that point, I kind of felt like all the problems in my past were returning. Of course, I never had a relationship with Collins. We were just friends, and he asked me out, but I refused. We'd moved past that, and he even attended my wedding. There was nothing to worry about, but I didn't like everything that was happening at all. I already hated the fact that Sandra was trying to reach out to my husband. I was certain of this because I saw her missed calls on his phone. From the things I saw, it seemed like Andrew had been ignoring all her advances, but she was still trying. I knew that it was only a matter of time before he gave in or she got crazier. I spoke to Linda about my concerns and she assured me that Andrew was never going to cheat on me. I believed her and so I tried to calm down. Collins became a thorn in my flesh all of a sudden. He was my husband's best friend. Childhood friend for that matter, so it made sense that he started visiting our house frequently. First, he brought his siblings along and tried to tell us how he was being a wonderful father figure. Andrew and Collins had a very strong friendship, so Andrew did not seem to mind Collins' regular visits. I'm sure you all have read about those ladies that are accused of coming in between their husband's relationship with his friends and relatives. I didn't want to be that wife, and I didn't want to be accused of doing something like that. That's why I tried my honest best not to let Andrew know that I was uncomfortable with Collins' visits. I did not want to suddenly tell my husband that I didn't want his best friend at our house anymore. Collins took my silence for approval. He started coming more frequently and eating around the house. Yes, he practically took anything he wanted from the refrigerator without asking me. Sure, he didn't need to. I'm just his friend's wife. I'm sure he did all those things just to get on my nerves and make me do something that will cause a rift between my husband and I. All I wanted to do was handle everything in an amicable manner. I tried to be mature and reasonable in everything I did. One day, I decided to have a conversation with my husband. I told him everything Collins was up to, and I told him I didn't like his behavior at all. My husband gave me permission to speak to him and sort things out. He told me he didn't want to be involved in our disagreements. To be honest, I was really upset that my husband said that to me. He also said he didn't want to pick a side. Who the fuck was talking about picking sides? My fellow Redditors, all I wanted him to do was tell his friend to limit the way he came to the house and acted all high and mighty. But it seemed like I was asking him to do too much, so I took matters into my own hands. I had an argument with Andrew over the issue, but I decided to let it go because I knew that was Collins' plan all along. It was just a pity that my husband wasn't ready to see that his childhood best friend was trying his very best to ruin his marriage. One day I decided to speak to Collins. I told him I disliked the way he came to the house frequently and messed with the things in the kitchen without my permission. Collins actually got very angry and left the house. That was not my intention, so I told my husband what happened and asked him to call Collins on my behalf. Collins' phone number was STI blocked on my phone, and I did not plan on unblocking him. After Andrew got off the phone with Collins, he got angry and told me not to make Collins feel unwelcome in our home anymore. Apparently, Collins made up stories about me to Andrew. I tried explaining myself, but Andrew just told me not to bring up the subject. My fellow Redditors, I was very angry. It felt like my husband was only ready to take Collins' side, so I decided to stop caring about Collins' presence. I let him go whatever he wanted. After all, the real owner of the house did not mind. I did not speak to Linda about what was going on because I was already tired of disturbing her after every little misunderstanding between my husband and I. I wanted to handle things independently without disturbing her. At that point, I'd already forgotten all about Sandra and her presence in New York. I didn't even think about her or the fact that she was still trying to contact Andrew. But one day, I just couldn't understand what transpired. That was the same day I cheated on my husband with Collins. I still regret every single thing that transpired that day, but all I can do now is wallow in self-pity. It was a rainy day. It had rained from the previous night non-stop. Andrew only managed to get to work safely when the rain stopped for some time. After he left for work, Collins showed up suddenly. Apparently, he forgot his work file at our place. Yes, that's how frequent he showed up. He was almost like a tenant at our place. After getting the work file, he asked if he could stay for brunch. Of course, I knew that was just his way of trapping me. If I refused, he'd make up stories to tell Andrew. I served him brunch, and while he was eating, it started raining again. It was another heavy rain, and it didn't look like it planned to stop. Collins could not go because it was not good weather to drive in. I was really worried about the possibility of Collins not making it home early that day because the rain was really heavy. I didn't want him to stay out late. I was worried for his safety, and I was also worried that Sandra might try something suspicious. A part of me felt like I was exaggerating, but I had to be certain. So, my fellow Redditors, I called my husband when it was almost 5 p.m. and he told me it was impossible to drive in the weather. He said he'd come home late. I got really worried because even Collins couldn't leave. I decided to calm my nerves and just go to my room. I took a hot bath before changing into my pajamas. I was hungry, and I also knew that Collins was hungry too. I did not cook anything in the afternoon and just munched on snacks. I did not expect him to stay for that long. After making dinner and offering it to him, I stayed in the living room to watch a movie. I wanted to be around when my husband came back, and I didn't want to fall asleep before he came. I was also not comfortable with living with Collins in the house with my husband while I was in my room. I did not trust him not to go looking into our things. Collins also stayed in the living room and watched the movie with me. It was quiet at first, and we did not attempt to start any conversation. But after some time, Collins started asking me about my makeup business. That's where the conversion began, my fellow Redditors. We spoke about life and random things. After some minutes into the second movie, Collins came to sit beside me on the couch. Our shoulders were practically touching. I was not uncomfortable in that position, so I moved away and sat on another couch. He laughed at my reaction and sat next to me again. Collins gave me no space to think. He told me I looked beautiful and that he still misses me. He started whispering non-coherent words, and I honestly felt like he was drunk. But then again, I did not see him drinking. I pushed him away and warned him to stop, or else I'd call my husband and tell him everything. I did not expect Collins to laugh in my face when I mentioned calling my husband. He called me a fool and told me I was dumb to think that Collins had been faithful to me. I called his rants bullshit and tried moving upstairs. I knew his words were getting to me and I didn't want him to brainwash me. But, fellow Redditors, I ended up being brainwashed. Collins asked me if I was aware that Sandra was back in New York. That caught my attention, and in a bid to show him Andrew and I didn't hide anything from each other, I told him I was aware. He took out his phone and showed me pictures of Sandra standing in front of Andrew's workplace. According to Collins, Sandra had been trying to reach out to Andrew. He told me she still wanted him back, and she'd showed up to his workplace many times. I might not have wanted to believe Collins, but pictures didn't lie, and the evidence was right in front of me. Collins also told me that Sandra was at Andrew's workplace that moment, and they were probably together getting intimate. I was shocked, but I refused to believe it, and brought out my phone to call Andrew. Andrew did not pick up after 2 more calls. Collins laughed again and told me he was telling me the truth. He even showed me a picture of Andrew and Sandra meeting up for lunch. I got brainwashed, and I was stupid enough to believe everything he said. I started crying uncontrollably because I thought Andrew was cheating on me. Collins decided to comfort me by hugging me. That's how he started touching me, and I foolishly got carried away. I thought I was cheating back and paying Andrew back for lying to me. I ended up sleeping with Collins, and we fell asleep on the couch. I woke up that same night to a bucket of cold water being poured on me. My fellow Redditors, my husband stood there and watched me with disgust in his eyes. The rain had stopped, and he came home only to see me naked on the couch with his best friend. At first, I felt guilty, and then I accused him of cheating first. I told him everything Collins told me. My fellow Redditors, my husband slapped me so hard that I fell on the floor. He almost killed Collins right there in the living room. Apparently, Collins lied to me. All the pictures he showed me of Sandra standing in front of Andrew's office were true, but Andrew never met up with her intentionally. The picture of both of them having lunch was taken before I met him. I was so paranoid and brainwashed that I was not ready to see the real truth. After giving Collins several sounds, Andrew threw him out of the house. The words Andrew said that night still hurt me till this day. He was angry, disappointed, and enraged. He sent me out of the house in the middle of the night with only my pajamas. I had nowhere to go. I went to Linda's place that same night, even though she was terrified to see me in my horrible state. After telling her everything, Linda was furious. She told me she was disappointed in me for not listening to her warnings. She couldn't even look at me. She only allowed me to stay at her place for 2 days before sending me out. According to her, she could not go against her brother for me. Only my parents took me in, even though they still look at me with disappointment in their eyes. I lived miserably for 2 months. I tried reaching out to Andrew and visiting him, but he warned the gatekeeper never to let me in, and he blocked my number. Just last month, I heard from my friend that Andrew and Sandra are now back together. I almost ended my life when I heard the news. I've lost everything and I'm the only one to blame. Not even Linda wants to listen to me. Andrew sent me the divorce papers 2 weeks ago and I'm still yet to sign it. I plan on signing it soon because all hope is lost. I no longer have a marriage and I've lost my good friend. I betrayed my husband by sleeping with his childhood friend. Even though I was made to believe he cheated, 2 wrongs don't make a right, and I should have never cheated back as a way of revenge. At the end of the day, he didn't really cheat. It was all a trap. Maybe I was meant to learn my lesson the hard way. I'm to blame for everything. I regret cheating in my husband. I ruined everything with my own hands. Thank you for reading my story, Reddit. At least I got a little bit of closure. Till next time. Hopefully I have something to celebrate. Though, I highly doubt it. Hi, Redditors. I have an awful experience to share with you all today. My husband made a plan to catch me in the act of cheating, and now I regret ever cheating on him. I never expected him to find out I was cheating. I cheated because I wanted to rebel. On one hand, there's me, the woman with low self-esteem and an inferiority complex, and then there's my husband, the man who gets all the validation and respect from everyone else. I hated the way people compared me to him and just made it seem like I was the one lucky to be married to him and he was not lucky to be married to me. I've always held a huge grudge in our marriage. Do you know what is worse? I never expected him to make a plan to catch me in the act. Being caught cheating has to be the most demeaning thing ever. You become so embarrassed and disappointed in yourself that you can't even afford to look in the mirror. You end up with regrets and a huge amount of what-ifs. You ask yourself, what if I didn't cheat? What if I did not give in to the temptation? But it's obviously too late for you to start rewinding time by that point, so all you can do is cry like the loser you are. I read somewhere that no one really intends to cheat, but that's bullshit. I cheated on my husband, and I know how intentional I was in doing it. I'm not going to make excuses for myself, but that doesn't make it less traumatizing. He made a plan? I still can't believe it. I'm having trouble digesting everything that happened recently. I still can't stomach the fact that my husband has been hatching up a secret plan for weeks, and I only just found out. My fellow Redditors, right now as I write this, I'm literally getting chills on my arm. Do you know what it means to live in the same house with someone who has been thinking of ways to ruin your life, and then you did not know? I'm just very thankful that he did not do something that both of us would end up regretting. I thought I was blindsiding him, but it seems like I was the one being blindsided. How ironic. For the sake of privacy and the tendency of some people recognizing our story, I'll not be sharing our real names. My husband will be known as H and I will be known as W. My husband is 30 years old and I'm 32 years old. Yes, Redditors, I'm older than my husband. I will not be surprised if I get comments talking about our age. To be honest, many people have been curious about our age in the past. They feel like it's weird that I'm older than my husband. I've always liked to be a little older than my partners in the past, and I've always loved the concept of being 2 years older than my husband. So, why did I cheat on my husband with a younger man? You see how complicated this whole situation is? Now that I think about it, I can see why my husband was practically furious with me. We've been married for 6 years now, and we've known each other for 9 years. Yes, we've known each other for a long time, lol. If you are wondering if we have a child, we don't. Even though we've been married for so long, we do not have a child. It's something that always messes with my self-confidence. The feeling I get when I see my peers with children while I don't have one of my own is really depressing. Situations like that can make you practically go crazy. I'm not trying to say that not having a child is what made me cheat on my husband. Oh no, that will be very far from the truth. My marriage is okay. It's a respectful marriage and we respect each other. I don't know how to say this without sounding like a bitch, but are marriages just supposed to be okay? Is it still wrong if I want to feel some butterflies in my stomach after 6 years? I do not think it's wrong to want to feel that way at all. I think it's a natural feeling that every woman and man should have even in a marriage. I know that sounds childish and weird, but I'm going to say it confidently. I don't think the feeling of excitement should end just because you're married. I am not blaming my husband for our bland marriage. I'm not blaming myself either because I know it takes two people to make a marriage exciting. But I also think it takes two people to make a marriage equal. Equity. I've always fought for equity in my marriage. The frustrating part is that the fight has never been with me and my husband. The fight has been with me and society. Everyone always has an opinion about us. There's always something to say when they see us together. He's so handsome and intelligent. He looks so hot. He's younger than her. These are words that have been a constant in our marriage. I'm writing this here on Reddit because this is also a healing journey for me. I'm trying to release all the anger I've bottled up inside of me for years. I'm tired, and I've always been tired of being told just how lucky I am to have H as my husband. I'm not trying to say I don't appreciate him. I'm just trying to say that I've been made to feel like I'm married to him, but he's not married to me. Do you know how hard it is to be relevant in a marriage that tags you as the lucky one? My fellow Redditors, it felt like every single thing I did was to match up with him and be worthy enough to be called his wife. Our problems began from the first few weeks after we got married. My husband is not a celebrity, but he's quite known in the city we live in. When I started attending social events with him, my insecurity spiked to the highest level ever. I'm not ashamed to admit that I seek public validation a little too much. Yes, it's a problem I'm currently dealing with. I've always been the type of person that wants to be seen and loved by everyone. I think the worst decision I made was getting married to a man that was everything I wanted to be, but unfortunately wasn't. He was loved by everyone and people swooned over his articulate nature and his intelligent mannerisms. I've always been the odd one who stands at the corner only to be recognized when our age gap is brought up. Listen, I don't even see the reason why people are obsessed with our age gap. It's just 2 years. I'm older than him with just 2 fucking years. Why is it such a big deal that everyone has to talk about it all the time? All these things are not directly my husband's fault. He's always reassured me and told me not to pay attention to their words. He even makes a joke out of it and tries to cheer me up. So, I know you're wondering why I hold a grudge. My husband doesn't do all these things while they are present. He only reassures me behind closed doors. He laughs at their jokes and teases me in front of them. I'm a human being. Of course, I'd start reading into things. I just couldn't get why he never stopped them from telling those jokes and hurting me. I know he works for these people and has to put up an appearance, but give me a break. Your wife should not be the source of entertainment while you are standing right there. If it happened only once or twice, then it's fine. But it's not okay if it happens every single time for 6 straight years. I know I'll be accused of having low self-esteem, but is that really it? Maybe I just want my husband to reassure me once in a while, or maybe I'm jealous of him. I don't know. I still can't figure out what the feeling was. I still can't figure out why I specifically cheated on him with a man I'm younger than. I regret my actions and even find them disgusting for many reasons. Cheating on him has made me realize how much I need to work on myself and my mindset. But I still hold a grudge. I still feel like I have valid reasons, not for cheating, but for feeling dejected in our marriage. Now let me tell you all why I cheated on H. I feel like I was trying too much in our marriage, and he was not trying at all. Yes, that's the feeling I got in the marriage. Even though he acts like he doesn't care, I'm sure if people constantly told you how lucky your wife was to have you, you'd start believing it yourself. It felt like I was trying to match his standards while he just didn't try at all because he already knows he's everything I should want. I couldn't even make a request in our marriage because I felt like I should be happy already. We would go to parties, and some people would come and tell me how amazing my husband is. Some would even tell me that they were jealous of me. I like the idea of having someone everyone wanted. If you still remember, I said I have battled with always seeking validation from people. If a person like me gets told that I have something they want, I'll see that thing as something very precious. That's what happened in my marriage. I held my husband in such a high regard that I felt like he was too good to be true. What bothers me is the fact that my husband rolled with all the attention and preferential treatment. I'm not proud of being a cheat, but I definitely feel like my husband is selfish and self-centered. I have come to realize this recently. My husband could tell me what to wear to an event, but I couldn't do the same because I felt like he already had perfect choices. Yes, Redditors, I know, my marriage is complicated. There's been a lot of power fighting all through our 6 years of marriage. One person is always trying to hold the upper hand for some unknown reason. I really do think we should have gone to a couples therapy. We needed to iron out these issues first before we could really be happy. Now, that's the problem, guys. The fights? There were no fights or arguments. There's this saying that says when things are bottled up, the explosion might lead to destruction. My husband and I never had arguments about these constant comparisons. I am a coward for not stating how I feel, but my husband is a cruel person for not caring to genuinely ask me how I felt. These are issues that ended up putting several ideas in my head. I tried to withstand the voices and ideas, but I fell for all of it. Now I'm facing the consequences of bottling things up and listening to the voices in my head. You all might be wondering how I started cheating and what led to it. Well, get ready because the story is about to begin. It all started at one of the dinner parties my husband and I. Well, my husband was invited and he brought me as his date. No one ever invites me to those dinners. So it all started at one of those dinners. As usual, my husband was talking to his colleagues who swooned over him as I felt stuffy that day, so I excused myself from the table and wanted to go get some air outside. That's when I met S. I'll be keeping his name private for personal reasons, so please bear with me. In case some of you might have forgotten, let me remind you of the names and letter representations I've picked. I will be addressed as W. My husband will be addressed as H, and my AP will be addressed as S. I'm sorry for deviating. I wanted to make things clear since I'm not using our real names. So, moving on, I met S while I was outside to get some air. I was standing at the balcony while he strolled towards me. I did not notice him at first, but he cleared his throat and greeted me. I was surprised to see him trying to make conversation with me because I recognized him as one of the faces I'd seen at many events. He is a software engineer and has been a regular at almost all the events he attended with H. He introduced himself and I did the same. He asked me why I was standing alone on the balcony and I just told him I wanted to get some air. He said he needed air too, and so we just stood there looking at nothing in particular. I excused myself after some time because I was getting uncomfortable and I thought my husband was looking for me. When I got back to the dinner table, my husband was still engrossed in conversation with his colleagues. He did not even notice that I'd left the table. I got upset and went back to the balcony again. Thankfully, S was not there. I needed some time alone to calm my nerves. Let me remind you, my fellow Redditors, that I was already getting tired of my husband's nonchalant behavior at that point. So, some minutes later, S came to the balcony again. He complimented my dress and told me I looked beautiful. For someone like me who has only ever been compared to her husband, I liked the fact that S was giving me attention I craved. When I say attention, I mean I liked the fact that I was not being complimented only after my husband got his compliments. It felt good to speak to someone alone and have them engage in a conversation with me. S told me how he'd been watching me from afar and how he liked my composure and smile. I was shocked to hear all those things from someone that was practically a stranger. Fellow Redditors, I know some of you can relate to that feeling. I liked the idea of being known by someone else without even trying to get their attention. S seemed like a genuinely nice person, and I liked how attentive he was. While we spoke on that balcony, he listened to me intently. He would even quote the things I said minutes after I said them. I was finally getting the attention I've always wanted. When I said I seeked public validation, it does not have to be a group of people. As long as one person genuinely feels like I'm a special person, I'm happy. That's exactly how S was with me. I went home that day feeling very giddy and excited. I couldn't even sleep well that night because I kept replaying our conversation in my head. I actually looked forward to meeting him again, but I was not really sure I was ever going to see him again. But, as fate would have it, I saw him at the next event we attended 2 weeks later. Yes, my fellow Redditors, I saw him again. My reasons for looking forward to our meeting were not mischievous at all. I just really looked forward to being listened to, and that's what it was from the beginning. But as time went on, and as we met at several events, I realized that I was slowly getting attracted to him. I liked the way he told me several stories about himself and also asked about my stories too. It was a very big deal for me. Our usual spot to catch up and talk to each other were the balconies, empty halls, and hidden spots. All we did for the first few months was speak to each other. What made it worse was the fact that he always seemed to be at every event my husband attended. I later found out that he worked in the same company my husband worked in. That was the reason for our continuous encounters. One day he told me he was going on a business trip and would miss the next event, so he asked for my phone number. I did not want to give it to him at first, but the thought of not speaking to someone that's listened to me for weeks at the next event made me give in. I gave him my phone number, and that's how we started contacting each other. At first, it just started with text messages once in a while. There was nothing extra going on. Our text messages were even formal and platonic. I know that sounds unbelievable, but it is the truth. My relationship with S started out as a normal friendship. I can't even say we were really friends. Everything started out slow and full of boundaries. He knew I was married and I knew he was single. We did not try to step over the boundaries at first. But it was only a matter of time. I knew he was a bad idea because I never liked the way I was always looking forward to seeing him. A part of me knew where everything was headed, but I knew there was nothing I could do about it. I was getting the kind of attention and validation I'd always craved, and it made me make the wrong decisions. I know I could have spoken to my husband and told him all the things I found wrong in our marriage, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Accepting that you have a low self-esteem and an inferiority complex in a marriage is very difficult. It's not the easiest thing to do in a marriage because it makes you vulnerable. 1 month after giving him my phone number, he started calling me frequently. Our calls were short at first, but after some time, we began to talk for hours. I don't know if my husband noticed because I usually did the calling in the living room. If he noticed back then, he did not show it. He practically acted like he did not notice any change. Now that I think about it, I'm really surprised. I can't believe that my husband bottled up his suspicions till he hatched a plan against me. S and I soon became really close, and I began to look forward to attending my husband's events with him. Maybe this was one of the signs my husband saw. In the past, he'd have to ask me many times before I decided to follow him, but after I met S, I volunteered to accompany him to the events. I no longer cared about the constant comparisons and the unnecessary attention people gave to our age gap. There were even times when I'd ignore their jokes and act like I did not hear them. I noticed that the less interest I showed in the conversations, the more agitated my husband became. Now that I'm able to look back and reflect, I can boldly say that my husband really liked the attention he got from those conversations. That's the only sane explanation I can come up with. Even though S and I became really close, nothing intimate had really happened between us, not even a kiss or hug. But one day, everything changed. On this particular day, we were at my husband's boss's birthday party. I was sitting next to my husband and we were having a random conversation. S was nowhere to be found, and I just assumed that he did not attend the birthday party. I got pressed and decided to go use the restroom. My fellow Redditors, you needed to see the way I got spooked when I found S waiting for me in the hallway. I did not even think he attended the birthday party prior to that time, so I did not expect to see him there. I asked him what he was doing there, and he just told me to keep quiet. Yes, he told me to keep quiet because I'm certain he knew how risky what he was doing was. He didn't want to grab attention and make anybody else know we were together. We were at a birthday party that was practically filled with people. Anyone could have walked into that hallway and found us in a very compromising position. I said compromising position because S was holding my waist while he spoke to me. I'd been so nervous that my palms were sweaty. I knew that it was wrong to be in such a position with him, but it was almost like my brain stopped working. I couldn't think properly and I could barely say a word. I'm not trying to justify letting another man who wasn't my husband hold me. There's no explanation for that. I was wrong. But in that moment, all the wrong things seemed right. That was where we shared our first kiss. The kids had been so sudden and unexpected that I just stood there looking at him. He did not say a word after that. He just walked away and left me standing there. I stood there for a very long time because I was trying to gather myself together. A huge part of me felt like I should have stopped him, but there was still that irrational part of me that said I did nothing wrong. When I went back to the party to meet my husband, I could not look into his eyes for a very long time. I felt ashamed and stupid for kissing another guy right at the party he took me to. It was wrong, and I knew that I'd cheated on him in a way. But my husband did not seem to notice anything, even though I'd been afraid that he'd notice my awkward behavior. We chatted and had drinks like we usually did. I'm going to say this once. I did like the kiss. I did not like the circumstances around the kids, but I liked how I felt when I kissed S. Lol. You could say that I finally had the butterflies I'd been craving for a very long time. I felt excited and giddy. These are things I'd always wanted to feel for a long time. But for me, it was not just about the excitement I felt. It was mostly about how S treated me. I'm not afraid to say that I fell for how charming S was. It was almost like he studied me and read me like a book. Like he knew all the things I craved and lacked, and then he swore to give them to me. He was everything I wanted my husband to be. He was the validation I thought I needed. There were even times when I'd wished I met him sooner. If I did, he would have been the one I married. But that's just me wishing things that are far from being fulfilled. That was me letting my little imagination run wild. I got a text message from S one day, and in the text message, he asked me to come see him at his house. Imagine how shocked I was to get that kind of message from a man I'd kissed a few days before that message. I did not expect him to be so forward and intentional about what he wanted to do. Even a little child would know why he really invited me to his place. At that point, all sense of reasoning was gone. I did not think twice before getting ready and going to see him that day. We slept together, and that was the beginning of our forbidden affair. Back then, I used to ask myself if there was a possibility of my husband finding out the truth. I thought about that because I was sleeping with one of his colleagues. I had doubts, but I always talked myself out of everything. S and I would meet up at several places and we'd make out for hours. He was like my little secret, and that made me really excited. We talked about the secrecy of our affair and decided not to meet up at the events anymore in case we got caught. Anytime there was an event, I would tell my husband to go alone and that I was not interested. After he was gone, I'd go meet S at his place, and then I'd stay there till my husband was almost home. Our arrangement had been going on for months, and we were never caught. My husband didn't even show signs that he suspected anything was going on between me and S. He was so good at pretending that I thought I was the one fooling him, unknown to me that he was one step ahead of me. I stopped caring for my husband's events and dinners. I didn't really even bother asking him how they went. These are things I don't really regret doing because I was honestly tired of talking about him all the time. Every discussion and chat we had was always centered around his friends, work, colleagues, and life. His. I was tired of making my life about his. With S, I could fully tell him about myself. We talked about each other, and we had actual conversations that were not centered around one person. I really do wish that the circumstances were different. That way, things would not have been as complicated as they currently are. I thought I was having the time of my life by being free and dating someone that I felt was better than my husband. It was a relationship that was very wrong, but it did not end. It went on for months. Boy, one day, everything was exposed. It happened on a Thursday. I can still remember everything vividly because that day shocked me beyond my imagination. Before that day, my husband went on a work trip for 2 days. I spent those 2 days with S, and it was honestly the best 2 days I had in a long time. When my husband got back the next day, I was already home. H did not show any signs of suspicion at all. He related with me like he usually did, and he even went as far as inviting me for the next event that was coming up months later. I was very relieved that he did not suspect anything because spending 2 days at S's place was very risky. I even thought that the gate man or even the gardener would have told him I was not home for 2 days. Well, it did not appear like they told him anything back then. When I tell you all that, I was relieved. Believe me, I was. When you're cheating on your partner, even you know what you are doing is wrong. You will always be guarded because you don't want to get exposed. You know that what you are doing is shameful and morally wrong, but you don't stop. In my case, it was because I liked how well Es treated me in contrast with my husband. I was ready to risk getting caught just as long as I was able to spend some time with Es. I never even thought I could get caught. I know my fellow Redditors would ask me, did you never plan on telling your husband the truth? To be honest, I don't know. I don't know what would have happened if he didn't catch me cheating. I can't lie and say I was actually planning to tell him the truth because that will be deceitful. Telling him the truth was never in my kind because I am a coward. I could not imagine how he would react and how I would look. I never even allowed myself to think about that possibility at all. Maybe that had to be the biggest mistake I'd made. Letting myself believe that there was going to be no casualties after doing something so wrong was very bad. I was relaxed and felt like I was being smart only for me to get the shock of my life at the end of the day. I thought I was one step ahead of my husband, but all it took for me to find out I'd been fooling myself was one love from my husband. My fellow Redditors, it's time to tell you just how smart my husband is. His plan was so perfect that none of us even saw him coming. On that particular Thursday afternoon, I decided to go see Es. I told my husband that I wanted to go visit a friend. He offered to drive me there, but I rejected his offer. Who wants to be driven by their husband to go see the AP? When I got to Es's apartment, I called him first like I usually did. He answered the call and told me to wait for him at the door. While I was waiting, I was busy scrolling through my phone absent-mindedly, and that's when someone touched my back. I was so surprised that I almost dropped my phone. When I turned around, I practically gasped like a fish looking for water. My husband was standing in front of me with a higher frown on his face. I was surprised to see him there. I remember leaving him at home before I came there. My fellow Redditors, you needed to see how I just stood there without saying a word. My brain practically stopped as I tried to process what was going on. I did not understand why my husband followed me out of the house when I specifically told him I'd been going to visit a friend. When I finally found my voice, I asked him why he followed me there. My husband looked like he could kill me after I asked that question. His veins were practically protruding from his neck. He was very angry, and just looking at him, I knew that I was done for. He did not have to say anything for me to know that he found out the truth about my secret affair. His expressions were so stoic and hard that I knew what his anger was about. I still remember how my survival instinct kicked in, and then I asked my husband what he was doing there again. I secretly hoped that Es was seeing us through the window and would end up not coming out. Unfortunately for me, it seemed like the universe was working against me that day. Almost instantly, Es asked out of his apartment, "My fellow Redditors, do you know the worst part?" He had a rose in his hands. There was no need for evidence at that point because the truth was practically walking towards my husband. It took some time before Es looked up and found my husband standing there. Everything happened fast. When I say fast, I mean that I could hardly understand how fast they moved. Es tried to run away like a coward, but my husband grabbed him by the collar and punched him in the face. I screamed because I was overwhelmed with how fast everything had happened. One moment I was standing at my AP's apartment, and the other moment I was watching my husband wrestle with him. All I could do was scream because I was very shocked. Both of them were assaulting each other and there was blood. Es had a bleeding nose and H wounded his hands. I tried to hold my husband and stop him from fighting anymore, but he pushed me to the ground violently and spat on me. Yes, Redditors, he spat on me. I felt like filth just lying on the floor with a sprained ankle. My husband wasted no time as he grabbed pictures from his pockets and threw them at me. Yes, he had pictures of me with Es. There were pictures of us kissing, and there was even a picture of me entering his apartment. The pictures were recent, but there were also some that were over 2 months old. That was when the realization of everything finally dawned on me. I realized that my husband had been aware that I was cheating on him for a very long time. That was when I realized that he had been planning to expose me in his own little way and did not care to let me know he found out I was cheating. Everything was messed up, but what really left me speechless were pictures of me and Es during the 2 days I thought my husband was on a work trip. The pictures were so intimate and invasive that I could not even look at them well. There were even pictures where I was almost naked. I ran to Es and asked him if he knew about the pictures, but he denied my claims. He told me he knew nothing about the pictures and was just as surprised as I was. My husband grabbed my hand and shoved me till I was on the ground again. I can't even let myself recollect the awful words he said to me. His words were so demeaning and condescending that I broke into tears immediately. I knew cheating was going to lead me to a dark part, but I never expected the level of embarrassment I felt that day. My husband left me on the floor while I cried like a fool. S tried to comfort me and take me into his apartment, but I was over it. I needed space to think about everything that happened. When I got back to the house, my husband was already packing out his things. I was surprised because I thought I'd be the one packing. He told me he was going to send me the divorce papers in 2 weeks and that I should sign them immediately and send them back. He also told me not to ask for alimony and that he was only going to give me the house. I was meant to comply, or else he was going to release all the photos of me cheating on him. Everything he did was planned because he knew just how much I hated being criticized. He knew how much I sought validation and cared about what people thought of me. I agreed to his terms and watched him leave the house. I realized that my husband had been planning how to get out of the marriage without parting with his property for weeks. I'm not a gold digger, and I'm not necessarily interested in his money, but it hurts. My husband was not financially independent when we met each other. I practically had a hand in his success. I attended several meetings and consultations for him. I gave him referrals and assistance. Everything he had today is also as a result of the support I'd given him. I deserve alimony and he knows it. That's why he offered me the house. But I mess it up. It's all my fault. I cheated and I regret it. I don't just regret cheating because I lost the alimony. I regret cheating because I know it was wrong. He was not a good husband and I was not a good wife. Our marriage was full of condescending words and insecurities, but I should not have taken cheating as the solution. I should have tried to make it work or gotten a divorce. Now I'm a cheater, and my husband has demeaning photos of me cheating on him. He's loved by many people. If those pictures get out, no one would care to have mercy on me. I'm in this awful position because of the poor choices I made. I regret my actions so much and I hate myself every day for it. I don't know if I'm going to get back with S and I don't know what next step to take. I'm still trying to think of how to get my life back together. I'm still trying to get back my self-confidence and self-esteem. If I don't work on those things, I can't be in a relationship with anyone. The divorce papers are going to be sent tomorrow and I'm going to sign them like I promised. I hope 1 or 2 readers learn from my story. I ruined my own life. My husband did not treat me well. He was condescending and proud, but I should have walked out of the marriage instead of cheating. Everything is a lesson, and I've learned mine the hard way. Hey all, this is going to be a lengthy post, so brace yourself. I am a 44-year-old married man. I knew what I wanted in life from the very beginning. A decent paying job, a loving wife, and beautiful kids. That was my plan for life. And I got all of it. Well, almost all until things came crashing down. I caught my wife red-handed cheating with my son's best friend. I am devastated, to say the least. She ruined not just my life, but also my son's. I just wanted somewhere to pour my heart out with my story. I found out that this was a perfect place for people like me to let it out and find comfort from others. Let's back up for a bit till we get to the juicy parts of the story. I know that's what you guys are here for. So let's start from how it all started. My wife, Bella, and I have been married for the past 20 years. We got married when we were very young and just starting on with our lives. Initially, we were very happy, like 2 love-struck people, and loved every second of being together. Bella had always been a very attractive woman. I might admit that when we started dating, I was always uncomfortable with the way guys used to look at her, always judging as to how a pretty woman like her could be with an average-looking guy like me. And although I was uncomfortable with the way men used to look at her, what concerned me even more was the way she looked back at them, giving them flirty glances and flashing a smile. I guess I should have seen this coming. But when you are young and with an attractive woman, you just want to make that woman your own by marrying her, rather than thinking what could happen to you in the long term. My wife did not have much ambition to work, and I did not mind that. She was a stay-at-home wife that changed very soon. She got pregnant just 2 weeks after we were married. I was elated to hear her being pregnant. On the other hand, my wife did not look that happy. I asked her what the matter was and if she wasn't happy with the news. She said that she is scared and too young to be a mother. I could understand that. I was 24 and she was 21. The fear was understandable. However, I convinced her that I would always be there for her. Finally, after a lot of convincing, Bella finally agreed to go ahead with the pregnancy. Since she was too young and slim, she had a lot of problems during her pregnancy. It was very difficult for me to take care of her and work at the same time. I worked my ass off to keep balance between work and being there for Bella. Every time there was a problem with her pregnancy, she blamed me for forcing her to go ahead with the pregnancy. I ignored it most of the time as I knew that it was just the mood swings and that she did not mean any of it. Finally, she gave birth to a baby boy. We named him Luke. We instantly fell in love with him and wanted to provide him with everything that he ever asked for. We were determined to give Luke the best life possible, showering him with love and ensuring his every need was met. As he grew older, our bond only strengthened, and we cherished every moment spent with our precious son. I started taking up more and more work and got caught up with work most often than not. As he grew older, Bella and I had designated roles in our lives. I was the breadwinner and she was the caretaker. A few years later, Luke started going to school. Bella would take him to school and get him back. I had started my own business, which kept me busy and away from home. I put all my faith in Bella to raise Luke with utmost care and affection. The days I was home, I noticed that Bella would use ample amount of time to get ready just to drop Luke to school. When I asked her about it, she told me that she does not want other mothers to judge her. She even joined yoga classes to get herself into shape. I was a little surprised by this, but anyway, as long as she was happy, I did not mind it. I had a few dull days at work as business was not doing that well. I was spending much of my time at home. I would get up to see Bella get up early and have everything ready for Luke's school. I could see how she cared so much for him. She would dress up and even put on makeup just to drop him off at 7 a.m. I never knew she was so scared of being judged by others to go through all this effort. I suggested dropping them off as I had nothing going on. She hesitated at first and then agreed. I was waiting by the car with Luke when she rushed in to get her phone. She came in and we drove off to Lukey's school. After dropping him off, I asked her if she wanted to eat out as it's been too long for just the two of us. She said that she has to go to her yoga classes at 11 and can't be late for it. I thought it was strange that she cared much more about the yoga class than spending time with me. I promised her that we would be back by then. I took her to her favorite cafe and we bonded. It was refreshing to spend time alone, just the two of us. At 10, she reminded me that she needs to get home, otherwise she would be late for her class. I told her that I could drop her, but she said that she would like to walk, as it wasn't far off. I did not have a choice, so I stayed at home trying to figure out ways to get my business on track. As days passed, I found a new investor and got super busy. I would often leave home by 5 and get back pretty late. Both Bella and Luke would be fast asleep by the time I was home. I wished and prayed that I get to spend more time with both of them. I did not want to miss this time to see my son growing up. One day I left home very early to meet a potential partner. Halfway there, I got a call that due to bad weather, he could not make it and had to reschedule. I agreed on the reschedule and started heading home. That's when I realized that it was almost time to get Luke from school. I figured I could make it in time and zip through the traffic. I could not imagine the look of surprise on both Luke and Bella when they would see me at school. With these thoughts, I rushed to the school. I parked my car as I started seeing all the kids leaving. I tried to spot Bella and Luke. I decided to look for Bella's car, which would make it easier. I found her car and an empty spot beside it. I parked my car beside her car so I could not miss them when they came out. I was getting impatient when I saw her getting out of one of Luke's teacher's cars. I could not understand what was happening. Where was Luke? Why was she getting out of that car? I walked towards them and confronted her. She looked at me with shock and surprise. I did not know if that was because I was here or because I caught her here. She told me that the teacher wanted to show her Luke's test results and discuss it with her. I asked her that the car is not a place for such an important discussion. I am not a fool. She said that he did not want to turn it into a big issue, so he wanted to meet outside of school. She very well convinced me that it was all about Luke and nothing to do with her. There was nothing going on between them. I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt and trust her explanation. However, I made it clear that in the future, any important discussions about Luke should take place in a more appropriate setting, such as during a parent-teacher conference at school. We picked up Luke, who was still at school waiting to be picked up, and left. Even though it wasn't much, that experience gave me cause for concern. I did not tell Bella about it, but was not fully convinced about it. As days passed by, I completely forgot about it as I got hit by a truckload of work for my new business venue. As my business started taking off, I decided to ask Bella if we could now focus on building our family. I wanted us to have another kid that would keep Bella company when Luke would be at school. Luke would have a younger sibling to play with. Bella despised that idea. She did not want any more kids. She was happy to have Luke, and that's it. Bella explained that she felt content with their current family dynamic and didn't want to disrupt their lives by adding another child. She emphasized the importance of giving all their attention and resources to Luke, ensuring his happiness and well-being. Despite understanding her perspective, I couldn't help but feel a sense of longing for a larger family and the joy that another child could bring. I put my desires aside for the sake of Bella and her happiness. I did not want to force her again to have another baby when she was not ready. A few days later, I thought that I should take Bella and Lukey out for a trip. I had not completely mended things with Bella. I was hoping to do that during this trip. I reached home early and could not find her. It then came to me that she might be in her yoga classes. As it was nearby, I decided to walk and give her a surprise. It was strange that there was no one around for the class. There were no cars or even people walking by. I approached the door and was just about to knock on the door when I heard my wife laughing. I stopped in my tracks and ducked quickly. I hid behind a tree as I saw Bella walking out. I could see her yoga instructor put his hands on her thighs. I was enraged and came out of hiding. As soon as he saw me, he pulled his hand away. Bella was unfazed, as if there was nothing wrong. I pulled her from there, and as we started walking, I told her what I saw. She told me that he is used to it as he has to teach by touching and correcting the postures. Also, she mentioned that he was gay. I was not convinced, but I let it go. Like I said, my wife and I had been married for 20 years. It was not a happy marriage, for the most part of it at least. After we had a baby, I started working my ass off to provide for her and the baby with everything they needed. It was hard. I had to make ends meet and also be available for Bella and Luke when they needed me, which was almost every day. In spite of this, Bella always complained about me not being around when she needed me. It was getting difficult for me to explain to her that I needed to work extra hours at my job so that we could raise our baby the way we wanted. The strain on our relationship only intensified after Luke started going to school. I felt torn between being a caring husband, a doting father, and the sole bread earner of the house. Somehow, I still managed to maintain the financial stability for our young family. Despite all this, she always blamed me for convincing her to have a baby and ruining her future. This was the topic of constant arguments between us for a long time. The tension between us only grew more and more, as she believed that her dreams and aspirations were shattered because of my decision. It seemed like in every disagreement, we had to circle back to this topic, causing strain in our relationship. And although we had cracks in our relationship, and we were never going to be the same again, we both loved our son too much, so we stayed together for his sake. There were instances when I had noticed my wife flirting with young men, which according to her was not harmful at all. She called it being friendly and told me I was jealous. I ignored this as I always believed she would never cheat on me. I decided I will not ask her anything about her male friends as long as she took care of our son. Looking back now, I don't think that was a good thing. I even caught her a little too comfortable with a few men more than once. I let it go as I loved her way too much. Our son Luke has always been a very good boy. He was very good at his studies and always responsible. He grew up with another boy named Troy. They were inseparable since childhood. When they were 12, Troy's family had to move to a different city for his dad's business. The boys still kept in touch even after that. They would often video chat and plan visits to see each other during school breaks. Despite the distance, their friendship remained strong, proving that true bonds can withstand any obstacle. When Luke and Troy were 15, they decided to go to the same university. They had rented an apartment there and were living together. One summer, Luke and Troy wanted to come and stay with us during their summer. We were very happy to hear this. After the boys arrived, our house was filled with laughter and joy after a long time. Seeing the boys around the house brought back memories of when we were all younger and spent summers together. I was hoping that this could be an opportunity for us to get closer to each other as a family. Bella was the happiest to have the boys around. She insisted on driving them everywhere and was spending as much time as possible with them. I was happy to see that due to Luke and Troy coming over. There was so much positivity in our house, and subsequently, less friction between Bella and me. I thought that this could be an opportunity I could grab to mend my relationship with Bella. I went out of my way to plan a trip to a cottage in the woods with the boys and Bella. I was very excited for this trip that could change a lot of things for me. I carefully arranged all the details, from organizing fun activities for everyone to ensuring a comfortable stay at the cottage. The anticipation of spending quality time together in such a peaceful setting filled me with hope and optimism for the future of our relationship. The activities would keep the boys busy and give me some alone time to reconcile with Bella. I did not share my details of the trip as I wanted it to be a surprise for all of them and look at what I would see when they realized where we were heading to. I told all of them that I would be taking them on a long drive and we might be back early in the morning, so we packed up a few clothes. Bella was very reluctant but went ahead with the plan. We started driving and the boys started playing loud music as the car sped off. After 3 hours of driving and a few bathroom breaks, we were on the road to the cottage. That is when realization stuck and the boys looked at me amazed. They finally understood what I had planned. We made our way into the cottage and made ourselves comfortable. The boys made plans of what they would do the next day. Everything was going the way I had wanted it to. We had our dinner and went to bed. The next morning, we headed out skiing and were out till lunch. During lunch, I noticed that Bella was eyeing Troy with a mischievous smile. I could not shake that feeling off, but then I felt very absurd to think that Bella would think something of Troy. He was a kid who had grown up in front of our eyes. I decided that I was thinking way too much into it. Troy is the same as Luke to her. It can't be. I ignored my gut and tried focusing on improving the relationship between me and Bella. After the kids left, I told Bella that we should spend some quality time together. I could see that spark in her eyes when we used to be close. I cursed myself for doubting her. We had a nice romantic afternoon away from all the noise and hustle. I finally thought that things will slowly start getting better between us. I promised her that I would try to take such trips often so that we could slowly get back to the way we were. As we were heading back home after 2 days of our trip, I had a smile pasted on my lips thinking of how this has changed my life. We came back and things were slowly going back to normal. Bella would kiss me goodbye when I left for work. This was something that had not happened in like a lifetime. I was really happy and went to work with a smile on my face after a long time. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, knowing that our relationship was back on track. Bella's affectionate gestures brought a renewed sense of hope and optimism for our future together. Things were getting better and she was actually trying to rebond with me. But my happiness did not last too long. I started noticing that my wife had been missing from our bed almost every night for a couple of nights. Bella is usually a very sound sleeper and rarely wakes up in the middle of the night. I had been having a very bad feeling about this. One day when I woke up in the middle of the night to get some water, I noticed she was not there beside me on the bed. I thought she was in the bathroom, but she wasn't. I slowly walked downstairs to check if she was in the kitchen getting something to eat or drink. I couldn't hear any noise, but nevertheless, I went and checked in the kitchen. It was all dark and silent. As I started walking back upstairs, I noticed that the door leading to the backyard from the kitchen was open. I was sure that I had locked it at night to avoid any animals getting into the kitchen. I opened the door to make sure that there were no animals and was about to lock it when I heard a noise. I decided to investigate this. I followed the noise and thought it might be a bird or something. I decided to wait for a few minutes to see if it fades away, but it did not, and it kept on coming. As I walked closer to where the sound was coming from, I realized that it was not the sound of a bird. It sounded more like a human's voice. It sounded like someone was moaning. I thought it was one of the boys fooling around with a girl they must have picked up at the club earlier. As I approached the sound of the moaning, my heart sank as I recognized the voice. It had been so long since I had heard this voice, but it was unmistakably Bella's. But who was she with? Was she cheating on me with someone? Who could it be? As all these thoughts raced through my mind, I slowly approached the door to our barn, my heart pounding in my chest. I slowly opened the door, revealing a scene that shattered my world into a million pieces. There she was, locked in an intimate embrace with someone I had never imagined. It was Troy. I could not believe what I was seeing. I was looking at my wife and the best friend of my son in the same bed, naked, making passionate love. How could they have done this to me? And Troy? He was Luke's best friend throughout his life. Luke would be devastated if he comes to know about this. I was full of rage. I switched on the lights and shouted at the top of my voice, "What the fuck is going on over here?" Bella was shocked to see me, and Troy was terrified and started apologizing. I asked him to get out of my house immediately. We had a big confrontation with a lot of shouting and yelling at each other. I saw a side of my wife that I had never seen before. She looked at me with so much hatred. Hearing all the commotion, Luke ran up to the barn and saw everything. He was equally shocked and hurt. Looking at her son, seeing her like that, Bella for the first time realized what she had done. And although she was embarrassed, she hated me to have insulted her this way in front of her son. She despised every bit of me. It felt like the only reason she had been putting up with me for so long was for the comfort I provided along with the company of my son. In that moment, all the love and affection seemed to have vanished, replaced by anger and resentment. It was as if our relationship had been built on such a fragile foundation that it had finally crumbled under the weight of our differences. I couldn't help but wonder if there was any way to salvage what was left of our marriage. I don't even know if I want to get back together after such a deceit. Troy did not have any face to show us. He packed his bags and left. On the other hand, Bella, my dear wife who had been married to me for the past 20 years, was waiting for me in our bedroom. I didn't even want to look at her face. She had become the most disgusting human being to me in that instant. As I entered the bedroom, the tension between us was palpable. The once loving and familiar features of her face now seemed foreign and repulsive, a painful reminder of the shattered trust and betrayal that had consumed our relationship. I was in no mood to talk to her. She said that it was all my fault. I was taken aback by her accusation. Not only was she the one who cheated, but now I was the one to blame. Wow, just wow. What was I even expecting from her? She started her rant that if she would not have had a baby at such a young age, then her wife would have turned out to be completely different. It was I who had forced her to have a baby, and that changed everything for her. She lost her freedom, figure, and youth all at once. She would have probably become an actress or a model that would have changed everything for her. I was left speechless after all the venom she was spouting out. I had nothing to say to her after listening to all this. I was at least expecting my wife to love Luke with all her heart, but I was so wrong. All she felt was trapped and suffocated, so I asked her to leave. I was setting her free. The next morning when I woke up, there was no sign of Bella. I couldn't care less for that woman. I felt betrayed and hurt by the woman I had done so much for. I couldn't help but imagine all the times she had flirted with all those young men and wondered if she had been sleeping around behind my back for a long time now. I wondered how long this had been going on for. All those times when she had told me that she was just being friendly and I shouldn't feel jealous. I felt like a complete loser and hated her so much. I felt disgusted by what she had done to me and Luke. I was in a state of shock for the first few days. I couldn't fathom what had happened. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt this had been going on for a while. I imagined how many men she must have slept with. All those days when I was working my ass off to make sure that I could provide everything that my family wanted. She was cheating on me and having the best time of her life. I felt disgusted to even think of the number of men who had slept in our bed with her. Luke had completely shut himself in his room for almost a week. Even now, he rarely comes out of his room, mostly to get food and water. He hasn't spoken a word since the incident. I'm really worried about him. I'm not sure if I should take him to therapy to help him deal with the situation. He not only has to deal with his mom cheating, but also the fact that she was cheating with his best friend. That could lead to a lot of stress for a teenager. It has been a difficult time for me as well. I finally decided to divorce my wife. I did not want her to ruin my son's life anymore. It would be better if she stays away from the both of us. She anyway felt suffocated with us around. It would just be me and Lukey now. I still do not know how to react to all of this. Someone I had loved and been with for 20 years, someone I had shared the roof with for 20 years, was suddenly not there. I felt lonely and angry at the same time. But then I realized why I felt so much anger. It was not entirely because my wife had been cheating on me. It was also because she did not have the decency to apologize to me for her behavior, for what she had done to me, to us, to Luke. Not once did she come and say that she was sorry and she regretted it. I knew I could not live with myself if I did not teach her a lesson for what she had done. At first, I thought I would start seeing other women to make her jealous and make her realize what she lost. But then I realized it won't matter to her as she never loved me. I am not a violent person and do not wish harm to anyone, but I wish she was dead. But as much as I wished that, I knew that was not going to happen unless I did something about it. So I started devising ways of how I could hurt her. And although I did not like this, and how this anger was consuming me, I knew I couldn't just move on with life without doing something. After all that which happened, I realized that I cannot let this go. I cannot let Bella ruin my life and leave Luke in this state and be happy. So I hired a private investigator to spy on her to see what she was doing with her life. I wanted to know what kind of life she would be living with us out of her way. She had taken up a job as a receptionist at a 5-star hotel and was meeting a lot of people. After about a couple of weeks of spying, I was given pictures of her flirting with a rich old man. There were several pictures of her latching onto this man like a despo. I just couldn't help but think, did I never mean anything to her? We were together for 20 years and she moved on in just a couple of weeks. Did I or Luke mean nothing to her? All those years together, all those things that we had done as a family, meant nothing to her? I can't just sit and do nothing. I couldn't let her get away with it. Luke had gone away for university to another city, as he did not want to run into Troy. I was alone at home and tried to formulate a plan to teach her a lesson. I called her and asked her to meet me after the weekend, and although she was hesitant, I told her I wanted to discuss something about the divorce. She agreed, so I asked her to come home after work. I had prepared dinner and was waiting for her when she arrived around 11 p.m. We sat down and I asked her if she was hungry. She said she was not, and asked me what I wanted to discuss. Clearly, she was in no mood to stay and wanted to leave as soon as possible. I gave her a drink which I had spiked. Within minutes, she was unconscious and I carried her to the basement. I gagged her mouth and tied her hands and feet to the bed. She woke up after some time and was shocked to see what had happened. She started struggling with the ropes. She tried screaming but couldn't. She realized what was going on and was completely terrified. I gave her an injection and she passed out again. I had installed cameras in the basement to record everything that was going to happen in this room. I hired a male escort who would help me with my revenge. I had transformed our basement into a motel room with dim lights so that she cannot make out where she actually is. After my wife woke up, things had been completely different and she felt like she was in a different place. The male escort acted as if she was always there with him. He told her a facky story about how they met at a bar and then ended up in this motel room. The escort started undressing her, and she was enjoying it. She was completely in her senses now. She did not hesitate even a little to get comfy. He was young and willing to have sex with her, and that was all she wanted. As I was looking at the recording sitting in my room, I felt more and more disgusted towards her. Is this what her real face is? All she needs is a man to fulfill her sexual desires? I paid the escort and asked him to leave. Till the time it took my wife to wake up, I got the footage from the previous night and sent it to all her lovers that my private investigator has provided me with. I also sent it to her parents and the hotel she was working for. I wanted to ruin her even more. When she finally woke up, she was tied to the bed again and I was sitting across her sipping my morning coffee. It took a while for Bella to understand where she was and what was happening. She started yelling what I was doing in her room. I turned on the lights to show her where she was. She was stunned to know that she wasn't dreaming. She was actually here last night. I took her to the living room, her hands still tied and her face taped. I made her sit and watch the footage from last night. As the footage played, I told her if she ever thought about me or Luke while having fun last night. There were tears in her eyes, but I knew better not to fall for them anymore. I had learned from past experiences that her tears were often a manipulative tactic designed to evoke sympathy and divert attention from her own actions. Despite the sadness in her eyes, I remained resolute in my decision to no longer be deceived by her deceitful ways. I told her what I wanted to tell her, spoke my heart out about all the instances I felt that she had lied and cheated me. This time she took it too far as she hurt not only me, but also Luke. Luke was her son as well. I asked her if she did not think how it would impact Luke when he would come to know about her and Troy. Did he not matter to her at all? Had she never loved him? I could do nothing about it now. I knew that nothing I say or do is going to change that all our lives have been ruined by my wife's actions. I untied her, asked her to dress up so that I could drop her off to wherever she wanted to be dropped. With a heavy heart, I left my wife at the hotel she was working for and left with the closure I wanted. So, here we are. I am unsure if what I had done was right or wrong. The hurt and the indifference of my wife towards me and my son broke my heart. I would have somehow held on to myself, but Luke, he was a baby. He did not have to deal with all of this. It was not his fault. Why did she have to do this to him? Even after living for 20 years with a person, you cannot be sure if you know them well. I am still clueless about the reasons my wife stayed with me after all that hatred deep down. I am here to share my story and see if there is some advice or guidance I can get from you guys regarding the best course of action going forward. Comments. 1. You Reddit user 1. OP, I am aware of what you are going through. However, I feel that what you have done as revenge was way too extreme. You should just let go of this hatred you have towards your wife and move on. You still have your son who loves you and cherishes you. I believe that you both should move on and stay as away from your wife as possible. Continuing to hold on to this intense hatred will only bring more pain and negativity into your life. It's important to focus on healing and finding happiness for yourself and your son. Surround yourself with positive influences, seek therapy or counseling if needed, and channel your energy towards rebuilding a fulfilling life without dwelling on the past. Remember, forgiveness and personal growth are powerful tools for moving forward. 2. You Reddit user 2. OP, I am shocked at what your wife has done. I am too scared to trust anyone after hearing your story. I can't even begin to imagine the pain and betrayal you must be feeling right now. It's heartbreaking to think that someone you loved and trusted could do something so devastating. I think you did the right thing by sharing your story and seeking support. It takes immense courage to confront such a painful situation and open up about it. I think that you needed this closure and she deserved this type of punishment. A woman who does not care about a man she was married to for over 20 years is a shame. She did not even care about her son. I can't believe that she never tried to reach out to her son after all this. 3U Reddit user 3. Imho, she never really cared about you, the marriage, or your son. She always did what she wanted. There had been so many red flags and so many instances that you let go without getting into details of it. You would have saved a few years of your life and also the embarrassment to your son. He would have at least had his best friend with him if you had left her a long time back. I hope you learn from your mistakes and move on.